What up, guys? Welcome back to part 2 of our 3-part series of the Higher Heights Challenge, and this is actually the finished product. It's been a whirlwind. It's kind of fun, a little bit stressful at times, but it's okay. This thing, it was a lot of work put into it. Very, very excited on the quality of the parts we put in there, the amount of time I put into this thing with a lot of my buddies' help, and how it looks right now. As you can see, this thing is a beauty. I really like it. Wasn't expecting to get new rims, but that's okay. Sometimes life throws the curveball for you, but it's all right. She's all cleaned up, nice and shiny. Let's get the front end of this lift on. Let me show you what you got to do. And here's the kit that we're going to be installing today. This is a 4 to 6 inch Cognito lift. This comes with everything you see here, minus a couple of things right here and right here. Those are some extra special stuff that I added because I knew that my bushings were fried. I'll talk about those a little bit later. But here's the whole kit itself. Comes with absolutely everything you need. We're going to be dropping the whole diff to the front, and the torsion bars, the anchor point is actually going to stay in the truck. This is called a non-torsion bar lift, and I'm very, very excited to put this in. Like I said, comes with everything you need. There are missing some shocks that that came with it. They are actually already in the truck from the previous video. And those U-bolts and those blocks in the back we won't be using at all, as I wanted to put some springs in there to help kind of stiffen my truck up. And I'm not really a big fan of block lifts, but that's what most of them come for. They're nice and easy, but that's not the way I want to do it. I want to do this thing upright. Now, the stuff it doesn't come with is everything you see right here, kind of in this general direction. Now we'll start with the box. What is in box number 1? They're just new brackets and the bolts, because I'm not 100% sure how those keys are going to go. Those are about the only thing I didn't buy on this truck, along with the torsion bars, that's going to be new when it comes to suspension, because I bought absolutely everything. I just wanted to make sure this truck is going to be nice and solid. This truck is 15 years old and all the bushings are fried. That's what kind of stemmed this. I was going to buy all the bushings, replace everything. And I was like, you know what, I just want a lifted truck, so let's deal with that. These things right here, these are the lower control arm bushings and the upper control arms. These two are the lower control arms, one's the front, one's the rear, and then these are the upper control arm bushings. I don't need these because we actually have kryptonite upper control arms in there with came new bushings, so we'll set those aside in case we ever need them. But we are going to use those 100% for sure, and then these are the inserts for it. And then same for these. I will show you in a little bit later on in the video that I found. I'm not super excited about it. It's actually kind of scary. So these are the mounts for your torsion bars. What they do is your torsion bar cross member goes in here, and this goes on either side of the truck. Your torsion bar goes this way, and then this just holds it steady to the truck. Mine is sitting there doing this because this bushing is fried so much. So like I said, we'll talk a little bit later in the video. If you are having an issue where you're hitting bumps and you feel right by your feet, like either the driver's side or the passenger side, and you feel a huge thud, look under there, see if you have any scratches on your torsion bars or on your frame next to your torsion bars. If you do, it's most likely the cause. So this is the anchor point for the cross member for your torsion bars. And your torsion bars actually anchor on that cross member. And if these aren't very tight and solid, what's going to happen is with that bushing fried, it's going to sit there and do this. The mount itself won't, but the bushing will. And that's what's hitting the side of your frame, your torsion bar. You can feel it in your feet. So just one thing to look at. Like I said, we'll talk about that later in the video. And then here's the rest of the kit itself. We got everything for the diff sitting right here because we're going to lower that. We got the shocks up there. We got the spindles. We got a new cover for the front. We got some new cross members. We got the mounts to lower everything for your bump stop. And then here's a bunch of the hardware. And then these two back things right there, those are for your anti-sway bars. They're going to go obviously a little bit lower or longer. They're going to need to be longer because you're going to lower the truck out. So this is the whole kit itself. This is super high quality. I'm very excited. I cannot wait to install this. And I'll obviously leave a link in the description on all of the parts and tools needed, because like I said, I've got a lot of components going on here, not just the lift itself. There's going to be a long list of stuff. But I'm very excited. Let's get this in the truck. Very first thing we got to do is pull those wheels off, and let's do it. All right, first you got to like this video so we can push it up in the algorithm so people can see what it takes to lift a truck something like this, especially with independent front suspension like GM has. I know it rides really great, but it is much more entailed of a lift. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take this inner wheel fender liner out. That is involved with 7mm bolts up here on the top. Where's the other one? We're going to go right here, right there. And then a couple other smaller bolts to show you. We got these fasteners right here. You just pull that tip out and you pull the whole thing all out. If you've got the current mud flaps right here. You're going to have a bolt right there. I believe that is a 13 millimeter. That's going to take the bolt out. This will also be in there as well. And then if you don't have any damage up here, you're going to have one bolt there. It's going to be one of those pitch pins ones, but it's going to be a little heavier. Mine is an aftermarket one because I got to hold it all into place. Let's get this out. All right, now that that's out, do notice I have a coolant leak. We will tackle that in a different video. Next, we're going to take the brakes off. 18 millimeter. That'll get your caliper and your pads out. All right, before we pull this bolt out, the other one's already out. This is a 10 millimeter bolt. We're going to remove that so we can lift these whole lines out. And just a flathead, just pry this right out. That's for your wheel speed sensor. All right, I just zip tied the caliper right there. Once that's removed, you're able to do that. Theoretically, we shouldn't have to remove that one. I'm hoping not, because that's a custom made one, but that's okay. Next, we are going to remove these two bolts. There's one right here and one right there. Those are 21 millimeter. That's going to take your caliper bracket out, and then we'll be able to remove that and your rotor. All right, next we're going to remove the shock. This is a Bilstein one, so it did come with one, so I'm not 100% positive what the factory one is, but this is a 17 mil. And down at the bottom, I do know that I use the factory bolt for that, and that is a 21 mil. Pull those out and remove the shock. All right, if you got a nice rusty one like mine, and it's sitting there and spinning just like that, what I like to do is just grab a pair of pliers up top, grab it, and then you can wrench it right through all there. So that's how we're gonna have to get that one out. All right, now that that's not out, not gonna lie guys, I ended up having to cut it. I just couldn't get it out there, but I'm getting new ones anyways. Not a big deal. Next, we're gonna pop this dust cover off. Just a flat screwdriver, pop it right off. There's the axle nut behind there. It's a 36 millimeter, so we'll pull that off, and then we will remove these 4 bolts here in the back. There's 1, 2, and 3, and then the other one is over here right underneath that. Those are 16 millimeters. Let's get those out. Dust cover off, 36 millimeter. Pop it right out. All right, on second thought, because of how tight this is, I think we're going to be replacing the spindle itself. It's going to get a larger one. It's going to sink these ones down further, and then there's going to be a bracket that's going to move the lower controller around. That's going to go down further. So because we got to remove the spindle, I'm just going to take it all out completely, and then that way we can get nice, good angles to rip these bolts out here. Those are 15, by the way, not a 16. So we're going to take these out here real quick. All right, we're going to take these castle nuts out. Just remove the cotter pin. If you've got an aftermarket one, if you got the factory one, you won't have a cotter pin. But 22 millimeter, same with the bottom. Be careful when you take those out. Don't remove the bottom one or the top one until they're actually separated, because there's going to be a lot of tension jumping up these and down, or jumping up the spindle up and down. All right, now I just cracked that loose. That's the lower one. That is a 24. Next, we're going to take the tie rod out of the spindle right here. That is a 21 millimeter. We'll back that out, and then we'll take these both these upper and lower ball joints out, and we should be able to remove this whole spindle. All right, now that the spindles are out, we'll remove the wheel bearing here, or wheel bearing hub. We'll move that in here in a second, but we're going to move on with the actual truck itself. So we're going to take out the actual axles itself. So all we need is a 15 millimeter, and you got to take out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them, one on each side. Or one on each side of the truck. Take those out so we can put those spacers in. We're also going to drop the diff after that, so need to get those out next. Next, we're going to remove your anti-sway bar links. Those are 15 millimeter. Back those right out. Or instead of backing the nut out, or you could just break it. So whatever, we'll keep moving on. All right, now we got the fun part. We're going to be underneath the truck. We're going to remove the torsion bars. What we're going to do is we actually got to put a torsion bar unloading key or tool in here. We're going to push the key up so we can remove this. What I like to do is put a paint marker here, let it dry so we know where they were originally, and then we're also going to measure it and take note just in case that we ruin the whole paint marker in there. So once this key goes all the way up, it's going to release the tension on this. We'll be able to back the bolt out, push the locking pin out, and then these torsion keys will go all the way down. I'll show you a setup that we have already, and that's what we're going to be doing. Just drive this up with impact to relieve the tension.
Should be enough if you wiggle. Yep.
And now you can see that it's nice and loose. Make sure if you're going to use impact, don't just go hardcore right at it. You want to go nice and slow so you don't slip or anything like that.
Yep.
All right, we're going to take this bolt out so we can slop the key out. Or I'm sorry, not the key, the locking pin for it. So this is 18 millimeter. Back it all the way out. Bolt out, just pop it right out, whichever direction it's going to go in. Looks like it's going to go in the other direction.
See how it's bringing it up over there?
Yep.
There you go.
Now make sure you go really slow with this. Watch your lower control arm down there. Now we shouldn't have any tension on this thing. We're just gonna beat the torsion bar right out. We'll get the new stuff in. All right guys, so I already got this one out. It was pretty easy. However, because of a 5-inch exhaust, I couldn't get on the little hole that's up on top of here. So what I did was just have this thing a little bit crooked, and instead of using the impact, I actually just used my ratchet to unload it all. So as long as you're nice and safe about it, it is fairly straight, but it's not perfectly straight. And you know what, the last thing you want is that thing to slip off, because that's gonna be a lot of pressure coming down. All right, now let's beat these torsion bars out. Being a Michigan truck, it's probably not gonna be as great as if you were a Southern truck, but we will see. Air hammer for the win is what I'm going for. All right, now that we got the keys out, that wasn't too bad. I'm just kidding. That took me and my buddy probably 2 hours to get those out. We ended up using a cutting torch and the air hammer, getting all that squared away. On the other side, I can actually show you, because that one was the harder side, the driver's side. I saw this on TikTok, a good old crayon trick, I guess. With the wax, when it melts in there, kind of gets all in the crevices, and then once you heat it up and it melts, you push it right through, and gosh, that came out in like 5-10 minutes. I mean, that was really easy. So I wish I would have did that on the other side, but either way, next thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the lower control arms out. What we're going to do is we're going to unbolt them. There's a bolt right there, or there's a nut right there, and then a bolt right there, and then you got the nut there on the other side. That's right here, and then the other one is right, let's see, I get a good picture of that right there. Those are 24 millimeters. We're going to get those out with this whole assembly all in place, so we'll be able to set that down, set it on the ground. I'm going to leave the torsion bars in there. There's no reason for me to actually beat them out of this unless I want to paint that. We'll see if I do or not. I do have new bushings that I want to put in these lower control arms, so we'll get those pressed in before we actually put everything back together. So the nut for the lower control arm is a 24 millimeter, and the head of the bolt, which is that one right there, and then the one right over here, those are 18 millimeters. Let's get that out. So I was thinking ahead. I knew that these bushings were fried. Well, I mean, I know this one's fried because of the torch, but you can see that these are not in very good shape at all. So I bought some energy suspension polyurethane bushings for the lower control arms. I actually bought it for all of the suspension components, but that was before I even had the lift, and then I saved them specifically for this. So if you put these in here real quick, you're going to get a whole box that has both the uppers and the lowers. You're just going to need the ones for the lowers unless you already have new control arms like the Cognito one, or a lot of people like to use the Kryptonite ones, which I currently have. So if you're going to put these in there, make sure they go in the correct way. So this is the rear of the truck, this is the front of the truck, and both of the mounts are going to sit in here just like this. So you'll have the thicker part, the like mushroom side of it, you'll have that sticking on the outside, and then this just slides right into the middle. As you can see, they have them in there already, and then these just press in. I usually press these in with a vise, so that's what I'm going to do with these ones. I will probably end up cutting these ones out. We'll see if the air hammer will knock them out if I just put it down here on the ground, but either way, got to get them out. Then you kind of clean on the inside, lube them all up with the grease that they give you, and they fit right in. They're actually a really good product. They go in very well. So I have used them in the past on different vehicles. This is the first time I've used them for this truck. So I'm going to get those in there. We'll paint this all up, and then we'll continue on. All right, before we move on, I want to address something here real quick on my truck. I noticed this a little bit ago. I haven't done anything with it. Figured it was perfectly fine up until we got the torsion bars out. And as you can see, this whole thing is moving pretty badly. What's going on is that when the torsion bars are trying to recoil, this thing is spinning like this, or it's going up, depending on how it is. And I think that's what's hitting my frame up front. So if you look right here, there's a bushing inside of there, and that's supposed to prevent that from moving back and forth, and it is quite worn. They're pretty bad. I know that we heated them up a lot because we had to move in there, but they wouldn't do that if you're just heating up. So I'm going to replace this thing right here. You can get that piece on Amazon. I'll leave a link in the description for it, but I'm going to replace that. They're pretty easy. So you can actually do these with the torsion bars and everything completely assembled in your truck. All you're going to do is basically take this bolt out right here. That's a 21 millimeter. The nut on the other side is welded to this brace. And then we will cut and drill these rivets out and then put the new piece in there, put it back in there. All you got to do is just support the whole weight of this cross member on one side while you replace it. So that's what I'm going to do. And then this is what the other side looks like. There's the bolt right there. And then there's the nut right there. But that's welded in there. You shouldn't have to. If you do got to back it out because it broke or whatever, it's only a 24. So that's not too bad. And if you do one side at a time, you can do that with the torsion bars and the truck completely connected. Seeing how we got it out, I'll be able to back this thing out real quick. I'll replace it, and then we'll move on. All right, now that one side's out, you can see, I'll get a jack here and lift this up. But you can see that's nice and out. So we're just gonna cut those rivets out. What I have found that's real easy on the rivets of the truck is if you just take a grinder and grind a little slit right here, and then take your Sawzall blade and cut it right across there. It actually cuts these off really well. Take a punch them right out. So I'm gonna support that out of the way so we can drill these out. All right, just like that. So what you want to see is this nice little circle right here. You can drill those, but that's what I have found is a little bit easier. Make sure you put a little bit of paint on there, because once we knock these all out, you want to paint it up a little bit so your frame doesn't start rusting right there. But all you got to do basically now is just knock those out. All right, then you got to remove it. So I do retract my previous statement. You're going to have to actually probably remove them both. As I get this one out, I can show you. So this one was a lot easier to actually get out. The other side, you got to kind of lift this up a little bit higher. If you've got a 5-inch exhaust, you're going to have a really tough time right here because you can't get it up high enough. So because mine is actually all completely disconnected, it's going to be a lot easier. But you're going to have to do the driver's side first and then lift this whole thing all up with your jack. And then that way this thing will come out a little bit further. So I'll get this one out and put the new ones in. All right, here you go. Here's the difference. So as you can see, this one's pretty beat up. Like I said, we did cook it a little bit just because we had to hit it with a thing, but you can see that, or hitting it with a torch, but you can see some of the bushings already going out, and this whole thing's rocking like this. So let's get that new one in here real quick. All they do is slide in this way, just like that, on the other side of the truck, and they just get bolted right in, nice and simple. All right, here's what it looks like from the other side. I just got it all mocked up into place. So those nuts are a 17 millimeter. And the other side bolts that go in are a 16 millimeter. And then just tighten them all down. And then that's what it'll look like finished product. Nice and good. Let's move on. All right, next we're gonna remove this skid plate and this skid plate. They both have 4 bolts. They're 15 millimeters. 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Same here. 1, 2, and 3, and number 4. Those are all 15 millimeters. Back them both out. We will not be using this one anymore. There's actually a different one that Cognito gives you that is a little bit lower, kind of protects everything. Or I'm sorry, it's not lower. It's just cut shaped differently, so it'll fit there with the lift. This one we can reinstall. We're just gonna have to modify it, which we will. All right, so here's our front differential. What we're gonna want to do is we're gonna want to disconnect this. Just basically lift this plug up. If we can do it with one hand, set this thing down. And just unplug that so we don't pinch anything. Move that out of the way. Next, we're going to disconnect the drive shaft for the front diff. So we're going to take 4 bolts out. 1, 2, and then 3 and 4 on the other side. Those are 11 millimeter. Be careful because this is going to be loose and it should not fall until we start actually moving the diff out. But just be careful with it. You want to watch it, pay attention. All right, next we're going to remove these 2 bolts. These are 18 millimeters. There is 2 nuts on the side for those 2 right there. And then we're going to remove these 2 bolts. Those are also 18 millimeters. And then you can see where my wrench is. They have a nut up here on the top. Make sure you hold on to that and then back those out. All right, next you're supposed to cut right here. So this piece of this will come right out. And if you save that, you can actually weld it back on if you want to return this back to factory, because this diff is actually going to come down. If I get a good shot of this, maybe from the side. So the diff will actually come down here and it'll actually be hitting this mount. So this has to come out. What I'm going to do is actually cut it right here and right up here on the top. I think I can get a grinder in there and kind of grind them all out. And then that way we can save this whole piece in general. I'm actually going to cut it right now and leave these on here, just with how difficult it is to kind of get this bolt over here. Now, if you really do want to remove that mount, this is a 21 millimeter on both sides. You can just back it right out, but like I said, I'm just going to cut this here real quick, and then I'll just drop it down with the front diff, and I'll take it out from there. All right, same technique as before. I just used a grinder to kind of grind this weld off a little bit and give myself a nice steady little kind of angle, if you will, to get in there, and then I use a Sawzall to rip it right across there. As you can see, it's a pretty decent cut. I got to clean that up a little bit. I will clean this up and paint it just so we don't have any more rust spots. This truck's kind of already rusty as it is. Next, you're going to want to take this bolt out. I thought you could take it down the whole way down as it is, just because it's on the mount, but it makes sense. This is actually connected to the actual frame of the whole truck on the side mount. So we got to take this out. That is a 21 millimeter. I'll pull that out. This should fall off, and that should be good. And then we have one more bolt up top. We'll get that next. All right, guys, I just wanted to show you this. Make sure you cut this part of the lower control arm frame mount. I thought I could actually just cut it off right here and I could completely save the mount. But as you can see right here, we can't actually get the diff in. You can see it's got to go over a little bit more because of the cooling fins and the hole arranged here. So make sure you do actually cut this off. I'm cutting only down just this much right here. Just got to do the other side. But just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. Now, transmission jack is the best way to go because that's fairly leveled, and they do have some dips in there. They also got some mounts that you can strap onto it to hold the whole thing. If you don't have one, you can do this with a regular jack. Just keep in mind that when it lowers, it's actually going to go backwards just a little bit. So these ones are the best shot you can because, like I said, they're going up and straight and down. But you can use a regular jack. I have a transmission jack, so that's what I'm going to use. And I'm going to support this here real quick. We'll take that last bolt out. All right, last bolt for the front diff is that one right there. It's a 21 millimeter, and GM did not make that one very easy. Let's see here, the head of the bolt, if I can get that up there. Head of the bolt is right here, right on the other side. 21 millimeter. Looks like you got to use a wrench here on this side, and then you can use a ratchet here. If you've got a shallow one that isn't super shallow, you should be able to take that off. So we'll have to do this one by hand. We'll take that out. It's all supported right here by the transmission jack. Let's get that out. All right, I'm unable to get a wrench in there, so what I have is a ratcheting 1/2-inch drive with a shallow socket on the side with the driver's side, and then on the passenger side I've got a deep wall with just a standard breaker bar. It seems to be working perfectly fine. If you guys have a better option, people who have ever taken the front diff off, please let me know in the comments because this is kind of brutal. There's only 2 clicks I can get with this thing, and it's taking a hot minute. All right, then the next thing is to take off is this sensor right here, and this was probably supposed to be banded around something, however mine wasn't. So if you take those 2 out, everything else should come out together with your front diff. Just be mindful of the cable that's all the way at the top hand corner. That's how you actually activate between back and forth on your 4-wheel drive. That's connected over on the other side of it. The first thing that we took off when we first started messing with the front diff. All right, forgot one thing. Before you pull this down, make sure you disconnect your breather hose and double check that your wiring is not still connected to this thing. So let's drop this thing down. All right, on the passenger side, remove these 2 bolts. They're both 21 millimeter. All right, I did not notice this from before, so this cable connection is actually clamped right here and right there, so I cut that off. I'll fix that when I get this back in the truck. And we're going to want to give it a little bit more cable anyway, since how this is going to be sitting lower, but either way, she's out. Let's start selling this kit in. All right, now that that's out, we have to cut this mount off. So what you want to do is stay above this right here, but just do a nice clean cut right here. If you do want to return it back to factory, or if you want to go even lower than that, you will need this mount right here. Cognito actually sells a mounting bracket that will put this back to the factory location. So we got to cut this off. Let's get it cut off. Wow, that's embarrassing. Hopefully you guys can cut a little bit straighter than myself, but that's basically kind of what you want. I did nick it right there a little bit, but that's okay. It's aluminum. I don't need to repaint that. So that's what we need to do. Let's get the mount on this thing real quick. All right, next, locate your front differential, your new mount. That's actually going to go in right here, just like that. You can see that we have a slot right here, and then you got the slot right there, or not slot, just kind of like a pin. So that's going to get mounted on here just like that. Your bushings in that hardware kit is going to go in just like this, right inside of those. We'll have to press those in real quick. And then we got some mounting hardware to get that thing on. So let's get this on. All right, now we're going to solder this on just like this. This is actually the side of the T-case on the passenger side, laying up and down. So this is the location it is. We got to take these 4 bolts out. Those are 15 millimeters, and the bolts we're going to put back in are a little bit longer than that. Those are 16 millimeter. Now make sure you put the washers on them before you throw them in. And then a 17 to put them on. Put them in kind of even. We'll torque them down in a minute. All right, torque these bolts down to 40 Ugga-Duggas, or if you're from America, that's 40 foot-pounds. Next, locate this mount. This is an extension for your front diff. It does not matter which direction it goes, top or bottom. It's symmetrical. The only direction it goes in is make sure that this flat side right here goes on the inside of your truck. That's going to go on the passenger side right there with those 2 bolts. Those are studs. Sorry, not bolts. That's going to hold on to the front diff, the whole passenger side axle portion of it. That's going to hold right there. That gets mounted on there. And once those are in there, they're a 21 millimeter nut, and they go to 85 foot-pounds of torque. Next, you're going to want to remove the bump stops for the lower control arms. It's just 1 nut right there, and then there's just like a little pin that kind of holds it all centered over here. That is a 15 millimeter. Drive them both out. All right, next you're going to locate both of these. These are your new bump stops. They're a little bit lower than the last one. They both have a partner on them. One is an 8221 and then the other one is an 8220. The 0 goes on the driver's side, the 1 goes on the passenger side. Next you're going to get this hardware set, 9111. And what you're going to need is you're going to need a 3/8 bolt and a 5/16 bolt, all the nuts and washers. What we're going to do is actually mount this on here just like that, and we got to drill a hole. So the larger bolt's going to go right in here, and then the smaller bolt's going to go right in there. Now if you have a truck like mine that's got a bunch of like scale and it's got some type of coating on it, you're going to have to scrape that off. Otherwise this hole, you won't ever be able to reach it. I can show you that here real quick. So you can't see that hole in there at all, anywhere. So the hole's right there. So we gotta get it a little bit higher. So scrape all that off. Put those 2 bolts in there and just make them hand tight for right now because we got to drill a hole. Well, it's all scraped off. However, I don't have to draw a hole anymore. Kind of got a little bit rusted out. Maybe we'll have to cut this out one of these days and weld in a new one. However, here's the premise is what you got to do. Basically, you bolt it in just like that. Put a bolt in there. Then the bolt hole will go in there. I'll show you where that one is. See, now that lines up a whole lot better with that scale taken off. And then you're going to drill a hole down here, right here in that second hole. I'll show you on the driver's side. All right, so I had planned on just filming the passenger side and then doing the driver's side, so I already drilled it and I painted it. I'll show you here what it looks like. So what you're gonna do is you're actually just gonna mount it like normal. And then, sorry, the lighting's back here, everything's black down here. So you're gonna mount it like normal. And then that hole right there in the back, that is gonna be a 1/8 drill. Drill a hole right there. And then take that last 3/8 bolt, slam it right in there. All right, looks just like this. The 3/8 bolt is a 9/16 head for both the socket, or for the bolt head and the nut itself. And then the smaller one, the 5/16, is a 1/2 inch. This bolt and this bolt right here are going to get torqued down to 19, and that top one right there is going to get torqued down to 13 foot-pounds. All right, now that we got these bushings all pressed in, we're going to go get the cross member that these are actually going to be mounted to. We'll get that in the truck. Next, we're going to grab this cross member. This is the one without the logo. That's going to go in the back right here, right where that bolt is. So make sure you have this portion of it. You have that on the driver's side. And we're going to reuse the bolts that we used for the lower control arm. This is going to go on the back side of the lower control arm. Let's mount this thing. All right, now that that's in, just make sure these bolts and nuts are hand tight. I'll show you the whole thing in its entirety. Just make sure they're hand tight. We'll tighten them up later when we get in there. Next, let's get this diff in. All right, not gonna lie, guys, that was actually pretty difficult to get in there. Thankfully, I got a buddy over here helping me. He's a little camera shy, so you won't be seeing him on the channel, but we were able to manhandle this thing in there. What you got to do is kind of put it in crooked, lift it up, and then put it back into straight, and then put a jack or a transmission jack in there and lift it all the way up. And as you can see, we're just right into place. You know, we gotta put that yoke in before we can get everything all squared away. I'll get to the other side. So we just got it in there resting in right now as it is. You can see that we got to push it over a little bit more to the passenger side to get that squared away. So we'll get this in there, mounted in place. So next thing is we're gonna remount that in. Next, we're gonna put these two bolts in those holes. I just set them in here. This is the two bigger bolts that we had left over from the differential mount up there up front. So we're gonna get that set in first. We're gonna slide the yoke into the tail as we mount it in right there. So it's all gonna be kind of one piece. It's gonna go all on together. So let's get that in there and we'll pick back up. All right, guys, I just wanted to show you this. Make sure you cut this part of the lower control arm frame mount. I thought I could actually just cut it off right here and I could completely save the mount. But as you can see right here, we can't actually get the diff in. You can see it's got to go over a little bit more because of the cooling fins and the hole arranged here. So make sure you do actually cut this off. Cut it only down just this much right here. Just got to do the other side. But just want to make sure you guys are aware of that. All right, now the diff is mounted in there real quick. Make sure you use the long bolt, the last one that came in from this mount right here. And I'll show you the passenger side. And then we just got these ones loose in right there. We're going to tighten these down just a little bit more, and we're going to slide that yoke in, and then we'll be able to start putting on this cross member to get the front diff mounted, front of the front diff mounted. These bolts are 22 millimeter, and then this bad boy is a 21. All right, next we're going to get the front cross member. That's going to go right where the lower control arms used to be, up in the front. That is right there, right over there. And then you're going to grab this hardware bag right here, the 9073, where you need these two plate washers. That's how those are going to mount in. I'll show you. All right, so these plate washers, they're going to go right in here, in this hole right here. I'll show you here once we can get it in. They're going to go in right here, right on this first hole, and then they're going to mount in right here on this slot. And then the bolts for the lower control arm are going to go in right here, and it's going to go in right through here. All right, next grab the skid plate, and we're going to put that all on there. The front of the front diff is actually going to be mounted in there. We'll have to use one of the old mounting hardware for that as well. And then grab this bag right here, 9075. These will be all of the hardware that you need. They suggest to start from the middle and kind of work your way out, have it all fabbed up, and then we can tighten them down. All right, diff cover is nice and in. It was kind of a pain to get some of these back bolts in there, but as long as you get it in there, just be patient with it. So those are all in, and they're all just hand tight, just so we don't get them loose. Let's move on. All right, now we're gonna tighten everything that we have just loose. Make sure you torque them all down to spec. All right, next we're gonna remove the spindles from the original hubs. And these are 15 millimeter. Let's back them out. All right, now that the wheel bearings are off, you're going to want to put them on the spindles. So this one is the passenger side, this one is the driver's side. The best way to tell is that it's going to be sitting in your truck just like this, and the nose is going to be sitting right here. So this one's the driver's side and the other one's the passenger side. Put your spindles on those. Make sure you clean them all up and throw in some anti-seize so they don't come out, so you can get them out later on. We kind of had a hard time with this one, so let's get those in. All right, now that's all together. This one is the driver's side. Like I said, this thing is up front. Make sure you have your wheel speed sensor in the top portion of there. We're just going to set these aside for right now. The instructions state to hang them on the ball joint right now. However, we want to get a little bit more room. Next thing we're going to be doing is throwing the lower control arms in, and we're going to use the hardware out of the bag 9073, and that's what these are for. The larger ones are going to go on the wide side of the lower control arm, which is the back side, and then the front is going to get the smaller one, and then you'll have a washer on each side with a nut on there. So let's get those in. All right, now that those are in, don't tighten them yet. We're going to install the spacers. So they're going to go in here just like this. You see the lip right there? That's going to go inside just like that. And then we're going to use the hardware in this package right here, the 9076s. They're the same bolts that you pulled out when you pulled the axle extensions off of them. They're just a little bit longer, so get those in there. And these bolts will get tightened down to 60 foot-pounds. All right, now we're going to grab this thing. These are side specific. I'll show you here real quick what they do. You're also going to need the last two bolts out of this one, the 911 or the 9111. Then you'll need the last crush sleeves, the big ones. They're going to go actually right inside of here, just like that. These bolts will go in there eventually. And then this thing is going to sit in here just like that. So this is going to go right over it, and then your torsion bars are going to go right through here. So let's get those out. This is a 15 millimeter. Let's back her out. All right, now that this is in, we're going to tighten those down to 40 foot-pounds, and then we're going to put the spindle in. All right, now that the spindles are in, and yes, we did bathe these with anti-seize. That way we'll be able to get them off again, because some of these parts were in there pretty well. Either way, as we're moving on, make sure that when you put your tie rod ends, you're going to have to flip them over. So normally they were coming in from this way, and then the nut was up top. We're going to have to switch it over. So the nut's down here on the bottom. We do not have anything tight at all yet. We just have everything all hand tight. So we're going to get the anti-sway bar links in there, and I'll show you how to build those. All right, with the hardware from this one, the 9095-1, this is how they're going to get set up. So this is going to bolt into your lower control arm. That is the bigger the bigger bolt with the bigger nut into this type of this U thing. This is going to actually go in the middle of that. You'll have to press this into here, which we'll do that off camera, nice and easy. Then we're going to do washer with a bushing. Make sure that this little castle type top goes up top, and then that's going to go right into the arm, and then this will be right on top. We'll get another washer, and this screws all on down. So next thing we're going to do, we're going to press those in, and then we'll get those in the truck. All right, and they look just like that. All right, let's get those torsion bars in. Everybody's favorite part. All right, to load these, what we're going to do is we're going to slide them underneath the truck. We're going to slide them into this little knuckle thing right here. They're going to slide in closer towards the axle so we can slide them back into the torsion keys, which we will have already unloaded so we can get them in there. So let's get these things in. All right, now that those are in, this is actually the next day. It took us a minute to get those in. So we had them in correctly. There's a certain way they have to go in. We got them in correctly, second-guessed ourselves, flipped them, and then they did not go in, fought it for a little bit, and then put them back in the right way they are. I'll show you guys what you want to see. All right, that is not showing up on camera at all, but here's how you do it. So basically there's an R and an L on each one of these torsion bars. The left will go on the driver's side, the R will go to the passenger side. And the way to tell is you want to put those up front right here with the arrow. And like I said, it's not doing very good because you can hardly see it, but the arrow is going to point towards the middle of the car. So that's how they're going to twist. And that's how you throw them on. All right, now we're going to start putting all the rest of the stuff back together. We're going to put the rotor on. And I seize it if you live in Michigan. Caliper bracket, then your pads. I'm actually going to be putting on new pads today just because it's almost time to do them. So I'm actually going to be using Hawk Performance brake pads. I have them on the rear. They're actually really awesome. I've got their calipers or their rotors on my rears as well. But We're going to use the factory rotors up right now, so throw your pads on. Now your brake caliper. And then just as a custom, make sure you guys grease your pins. Every time you pull them out, you want to re-grease them. What I do is I'll put grease right in the actual like little boot itself. I'll maybe put like half the amount of grease, or fill the boot about half as much, and then drive the whole thing all in there. Gets all inside of this whole thing right here. And then I actually put these on with a ratchet, not with an actual impact. And then we torque them down. All right, now that that stuff is all on, I scratched this up a little bit, but that's okay. There are nowhere to mount this here, so I'm just going to drive a self-tapper. I'll go to the hardware store, get one, and I'll just drive a self-tapper right here to kind of hold it in place. Make sure that if you have kryptonite, your upper ball joint needs to be on the underside of the actual control arm itself. As you can see, there's kind of a lot of tension on that. So I'm going to flip that here real quick, or not flip it, I should say, just remount it right there. And then we should be all good. Throw the tires on and we're good to go. There we go. Should look just like that. Greased everything all up. And like I said, big thing, especially if you got a kryptonite one. I assume it's probably like that for most aftermarket ones, but you do got to flip that over if you do have a lift kit itself. So perfect. We just got to put the tire on, do the other side, and we can take this for a ride. And here we are with a finished project, and this thing looks beautiful. I'm very, very happy that this happened out. So we gained about 3.5 inches up in the rear, and let's see if I can actually get a good shot of this thing. We gained about 3.5 inches in the rear and about 5.5 inches up front. So I would say that's about a 4-inch lift, maybe a 4.25, and it looks, I really do like this thing. It looks really nice. Now, we did take it out last weekend to go camping and had to put her in 4-wheel drive. Did a little oopsie. As you can see, when we turn, we are just barely touching. If you wanted to raise that up, I'll show you that here in the next video and how to adjust everything. But when you have really rusty fenders, now obviously I knocked some of that out. It just cracked and I just crumbled. It cracked and crumbled and I just pulled some of it out. But in 4-wheel drive, that thing doesn't move. Kind of shifted back a little bit when you're packing it up. So whatever, just keep mindful of that. Also did have to cut a little bit just right there to get the wheels to fit, which also is not a big deal. But I think it looks pretty dang good. Now she's got that mean, aggressive look. We'll give you the whole Instagram pose right there. Now before I get out of here, I am going to leave a link in the description of all the parts I used and the tools that I use. I think that is very, very helpful, especially on a job that's something similar to this, where you're going to be losing a lot of tools, you're going to be losing a lot of parts and components, especially with the fact that I replaced everything in the suspension besides the lower control arms, the torsion bar, and the torsion bar keys. Every single thing else is brand new. And this thing rides so much better than it did when it sat a lot lower than this. And then as always, if you like this type of content, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe. We do have a lot of stuff coming to the channel. I'm very, very excited about that. And don't forget to check out Xtrodinary Duramax on Instagram and Facebook. Those things are going very, very slow. Not nearly as slow as the channel, but that's okay. This thing looks mint. I am so glad that we got this lift kit in there. The suspension is just right on point. Like I said, it rides a lot smoother than stock. We did that frame, and this thing is looking really, really nice. I'm very, very happy with how this is working out. And I'm gonna get it out of here, guys. I hope you enjoy. Until I see you the next time, deuces.